Hello, trading has closed on May 11th, 2016. We had a few calls yesterday. We had a MEJT target of 2079.29 and that printed. We had an optional price target as well. These don't have to print, but it did, 2071.42. I also said unless we gap down sharply, I thought we'd trade over yesterday's close, but we gapped down sharply, which is what we needed to avoid having that happen. During the day and the afternoon, MEJT said sell, and it said if the move were immediate, which isn't required, that the move would tend to be strong. I don't have any new MEJT targets, not based on today's patterns. Well, let's see if we can make sense of what was going on. It's no secret. I wasn't expecting a big rally yesterday, so it's somewhat gratifying that the whole rally was invalidated with today's action. It's a hallmark of a false move. Well, there were actually a couple of things that led to the call of this being a false move. One is MEJT said it was false. The other is, this is a pattern which, in spite of appearances, usually closes at the day's low. When a pattern which usually closes at the day's low closes at the day's high instead, it's usually a strongly positive pattern unless it's invalidated by gapping down sharply and ideally promptly taking out the first high. And that's what happened right over here. There is something Tom DeMark has called a critical qualifier. If you have a break, it isn't confirmed until you trade at least one tick past the close. So if you gap in the other direction and never fill the gap, it's a false break. And that applies to today's too. It's to today's action too. It's very negative. But for confirmation, you really have to trade at least a tick, 0.01 under today's close. Well, when you have a bullish pattern and it gets reversed, it usually leads to more trouble, but it doesn't mean it has to lead to more trouble immediately. I think there's a good chance for a gap up. It doesn't have to happen. And as I've just discussed, if we go down instead, the party's over. But I think we have a good chance for a gap up. We have a wall of selling into the close. We have a close exactly at the low of the day. And we have come back exactly to this support resistance area, which I showed yesterday. So for all those reasons, although we don't have to have a gap opening, I think there's a good chance we will. If we have the gap, look for resistance at the MEJT target price, even though it doesn't have to hit it. I think any gap up will be short-lived, and I look for a drop with a low of, just make it with a low towards the end of the first hour of trading. The ideal situation, if you're a bear, would be to undercut today's low, preferably but not necessarily towards the end of the first hour of trading, undercut that low in the middle of the day, and if that should happen, it would be pretty tough to imagine anything other than an all-day tank going into the last hour of the day. Let's not forget that here's your diamond, here's the stilt, here's the stilt, and if you set this at 50%, yesterday's high may have been the target of the pattern, with this being a false overshoot. So the call for tomorrow is a possible gap up at the open, and once today's close falls, we have the potential for a major league tank, probably lasting days to weeks, based on someone else's timing system. All we need to do is undercut this low, and ideally undercut the morning low in the middle of the day. And even though we might have a bounce after that, I think it's bombs away on the downside. If we can't undercut this low, and particularly if we overtake this high, I'll be surprised, but I've been surprised before. And then obviously something else would be going on. And that's today's call.